Welcome everyone. Welcome to the 2017 Spring Webinar Series hosted by the Illinois Farmers Market Association and University of Illinois Extension. My name is Lori George and I'm the Extension Educator specializing in small farms and local foods in Mount Vernon, Illinois. We do appreciate you joining us for the webinars, and we will do our best to begin and end within the space of the hour that we've been allotted. Participants have been muted for the presentation. Should you have any questions during the talk, please enter them into the text box at the left. I will do my best to make sure that our presenter answers them as the time allows. This presentation will be recorded, and I will email a link to the archived presentation as soon as possible after this concludes. So this week's presentation is from Andy Larson, who is a team member of mine, Small Farms and Local Foods up in the DeKalb area.
A proud and appreciative team member of Lori's.
Yep. Thank you. Andy offers programs in the areas of small farm business and marketing, planning, backyard and small commercial poultry production, farmers market strategy and sales, and alternative crop and livestock production for small farms and acreages. Andy has a bachelor's degree in anthropology and environmental science from the University of Notre Dame, a master's degree in natural resources and environmental sciences from the University of Illinois, and an MBA from Iowa State University. The pursuit of sustainability in agriculture has been a focus throughout his training. Welcome, Andrew.
He's an egghead who spent too many years in school. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate the welcome. Anything else that you needed to touch on before we got rolling?
No, I sure don't.
Okay. Here we go, friends. Glad you could be here with me today. And don't hesitate to tap any questions in over on the side on the left. Happy to address anything you might be wondering about during the course of this thing. I've done this presentation about 17 million times, but this is like the first time I've done it in a very, very condensed and shortened version. So if I'm ever saying anything that doesn't make any sense, make me walk back and give you some more context, because I probably just forgot about it. But main things we want to cover today, marketing and merchandising for farmers market vendors. We're really talking about booths, signage, display things that make your farmers market booth stand out, your product stand out, a little bit of customer service to make you stand out, and at the end we'll talk about some of the social media pieces that you can use to really build your brand. So that's kind of the layout for the next hour or so. Okay, want to begin with the booth itself, making a standout market booth. And really, signage is one of the best ways you can do this. Some of the other things are dictated by the farmer's market itself, what color of canopy you have, whether or not you have a canopy, how uniform you have to be with other vendors, etc., etc. But having a nice vinyl sign with your farm meaningfully identified in large font that people can read from, you know, a block away or so when they're kind of doing their initial pass through the farmer's market and scanning about what it is they might need to buy. Here's a real simple example. Maggie's Farm, easy to read, large font, easy to read from far away. Organic greens and herbs, the main thing that they're specializing in, and if somebody's interested, they'll be able to see that from a distance. Creating a lasting impression. You know, this is part of brand building, but have a logo that is sort of interesting. This little drunken garlic in the fez is kind of a cool thing that people are going to remember after the fact, even potentially more so than the name of your farm. So having that logo, having that URL for the website, that's going to be a great thing for, you know, creating a little piece of that memory, that mind space that people will be able to draw on in the future. Some signs identify a specialty or describe their practices. There are some things I love about this sign, and there are some things that I don't. You know, this is somewhere in California, and clearly this market is demanding certified organic product. And it's really nice that this vendor has that specialty identified in a large font so that people know that this is certified organic. But certified organic what? And certified organic where? Unless you come up close and see that the farm name is John's Orchard and that it was mountain grown in California at such and such an elevation inspected by such and such an agency, that certified organic thing overtakes by a long shot the rest of the information that's on that sign. So instead of being part of their brand, it's the only meaningful identifier they have from any kind of distance in that farmer's market. So be careful how much weight you place on any given thing. Some signage is awesome just to make you stand out. I loved this. They just a simple chalkboard with a statement that's going to raise eyebrows. What do you mean my eggplant is faster than yours? I bet my eggplant can take yours any day. Or, people will just be curious as to what the heck you mean by that. So just a weird little goofy thing that's going to make you stand out in the crowd, because in all likelihood, you're not the only vendor that's selling what it is that you're selling. Photos. One of the things that people who shop at farmers markets are often in search of is a meaningful relationship with you and your farm. They want to have that connectedness to the thing that they're eating and the place that it was raised and the people who raised it. So having this is a real simple approach, just a poster board with some pictures of the husband or the landscape or the production buildings or the pasture or the chickens that are laying these eggs, or the kids, the indoor livestock. They the cuteness factor for those type of things is really useful as well. So this is a quick and simple way to deepen that relationship a little bit further than just that sort of cursory farm name and the town you're located near. It says, oh, this is a person that here's a picture of their farm and their livestock. I can believe this. There's some integrity and some honesty and some interesting nature here. One of the things that most every farmer's market vendor I have encountered has at least considered is shade. It's really important to have shade, not only for yourself to stay out of the sun, especially if you're on a nice hot blacktop parking lot, as many of us are when we're doing our farmers market vending. I am. We market in Rockford, Illinois, and we're on a parking lot and we're trying to keep product refrigerated, and if we didn't have a little bit of shade, we might wilt, whether or not our product did. We sell eggs, and those are in coolers, so they hopefully won't wilt. But for yourself and for your product, make sure that you're keeping some of that direct sunlight off of things. You're going to have a lower quality produce display, in particular if things are sitting out in the sun for an extended period of time. One of the things that I do want you to consider is the color of the canopy that you put over yourself and your product. It is possible that interesting colors that draw people into your booth will also cast kind of a strange light on the product that you're trying to move. Here it's pretty obvious that everything looks just a little bit jaundiced, I guess, with that yellow canopy over the top, which works out fine for the onions and maybe the potatoes, but it doesn't make the greens look as appetizing. So consider what kind of light is going to be cast upon you. A red canopy is going to do the very same thing, which can be used to your benefit or not. This is one of the vendors down that Lori and I both know down East Central Illinois, and he's a red meat salesman. So having a red canopy kind of casting that red glow on the meat that he sells could be a potentially useful thing. It's a logical color scheme with red meat and all that. But if he were trying to sell something else underneath that canopy that the color was really a focal point of it, that could be a detrimental effect to the other products that he had available. So consider that shade, but also consider the light that that shade creates. It's hard to go wrong with nice bright white. People flow is a consideration at your booth. there's two sides to this story. One is it's nice to have a little line in front of your booth because it draws some attention to you and your offerings for that week. The other people at the market are going to see that line and go, oh, what are those folks waiting in line for? I'm willing to bet it's something I want. Matter of fact, I bet they'll get in line before they even know what's there for sale. But on the other side of that same coin, you got to be really careful about making people stand and wait for too long. You got to have a system in place where it's quick for you to make change, where if you accept plastic, where it's easy for you to make that credit card transaction on your phone. It doesn't make everybody else sit and wait for a long period of time. At the very least, what you should make sure that you do is acknowledge those folks that are standing in line. Don't have a long conversation with the person at the front and doing the transaction right now and not say, okay folks, I see you there, I'll get to you just as soon as I possibly can. Make sure that you acknowledge those folks waiting in line. Otherwise, they're not going to stay in that line and you're going to lose out on that transaction. If it's at all possible, it's really worthwhile to set up your booth in such a way that it lends itself to people being able to do the business they want to do at your booth quickly and easily. If you happen to be lucky enough to have a three-sided booth area, this little horseshoe arrangement is sort of nice. The front of booth is up at the top. You've got samples in the middle of each of those three tables. You've got product for sale there as well, and then you've got your cash box sort of segregated from the rest of where the transactions are taking place. And then sort of down by the back of the booth here at the bottom, your overstock, your additional products, and you're using some of that height for the display of your product as well. So many of us, myself included, are using just sort of a one-sided booth, so to speak. You just have that front that's available for the comings and goings of the people, and that's a very typical thing. Just make sure you're acknowledging those folks that are moving through the place. And if you got questions, type them in, folks, just a reminder. Another thing that's going to make you, well, it'll make you stand out if you're exceptional at it, but it's also just kind of baseline necessity in order to have loyal customers. You really got to think about customer service as what you can offer the people who are coming to your booth aside from just that high quality product. Okay? The product is essential. If people are coming to a farmer's market and they're making the extra investment of time and often money in order to come to that location, they are looking for a top shelf product. They're looking for a high quality product. So be aware of that. Bring your best stuff to the farmer's market if it's going to be a high dollar marketplace for you. But some of the other things that are really essential as far as going above and beyond with the customer service, be friendly, don't be aggressive, but be assertive. Say hello. Try and get people's eye, get people's attention. Ask them if they've ever had X, Y, or Z. Get those samples in their face, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. If the market starts at 9, be set up and ready to sell at 9. Same story if the market starts at 7, even if you had to travel 2.5 hours to get there. Be reliable, be in the same place, and be ready to sell product. Shoot, don't be ready to sell product on the hour. Be ready to sell product 10 minutes before the hour starts when people start showing up. Have bags, have good organization, have an abundant amount of information about yourself, about your product, and if you can, offer a little bit extra. If you are at a market that allows this, help people carry stuff out. Have wagons or shopping carts or whatever. I've heard of markets where the local Boy Scout troop has shopping carts from the local grocery store and they move product around for, especially elderly visitors. That's a fabulous thing. The more stuff that they can carry in an easy way, the more stuff they're likely to walk away with at the farmer's market. And that means the more stuff you're likely to sell. So really, really make a point of reliability, friendliness, and customer service when you're at the farmer's market. Because the opposite is going to kill your business in a quick way. If you're talking on the phone, if you look or smell like you just came out of the hog barn, you're there 20 minutes late, and they're not sure whether or not they're actually getting a good deal, that kind of thing is going to be one of the things that makes loyal customers disappear or never become loyal. As a matter of fact, the top annoyances at farmers markets for the customers themselves are customer service annoyances. If you're taking calls, if you're talking with the person that you know in the line for an extended period of time, those are going to be big no-nos and people are going to turn away. If there's a long line and they don't want to wait, they'll turn away. If you fail to acknowledge the people in the line, they will turn away. And make sure, of course, that you have an adequate supply of change. Even if you didn't stop at the bank on the way in, you usually have vendors next to you that you know, and they'll be able to help you out in a pinch. My wife has forgotten change. My wife has forgotten bags. I have forgotten tables when we go to the farmer's market. But when we get there, we always have a good social peer network of people that'll help us make it happen even when we messed up. And like I mentioned before, just like the eggplant sign, just stand out somehow. I know one vendor who used to sell at the Rochester, Minnesota market who did all of these things. He sang, he danced, he juggled produce, he gave flowers to old ladies, he wore this goofy, ugly, crummy hat that he used to wear when he was doing his production, but then people came to know him by that goofy hat. I mean, so whatever it is that's going to give you that reliable, consistent image from week to week that people remember, having that positive experience is what's going to bring them back. So really stand out if you can. Okay, so that was the talk about the booth itself, the actual physical infrastructure at the farmer's market on a week-to-week basis. Type in questions about that. Otherwise, the next thing that we're going to cover is product merchandising. In addition to the booth looking nice, the product itself has to look real good in order to be sort of an appetizing, wanting to buy type of thing at the farmer's market. And so a few tricks of the trade in order to make that happen here. We're dealing in a time of short attention spans, if you haven't already picked up on that. So you really want to have a product display that's going to be, well, I like the way this is said, a work of art that invites interaction. I mean, something like this is really going to catch someone's eye as they go by. It's beautifully arranged. It's colorful. It has a lot of textures. It's got that antique-y look to it, and everything looks kind of consistent and delicious. You know, the only beef that I would have with a display like this is, what if I want the yellow pepper on that far back basket? You know, you don't want your customers having to lean over 2 or 3 shelves of other good stuff and accidentally fall into it or tip over it or squish it or whatever by accident. So invite interaction if you can, but make sure that that interaction isn't something that destroys or contaminates your product. I'm pretty sure this is from a grocery store here, but this is, you know, you see those big pyramids of apples, for example, when you get into the produce section of a store. And then somebody went to the length of putting up a sign that says, you know, please don't handle these because you're going to create an avalanche. Well, that does the exact opposite of inviting interaction. That's trying to keep people away because the work of art is more important than the product being sold. And I'm like I said, I'm sure that this is a grocery store and not a farmer's market, because God knows none of us have time to set up one of those apple pyramids at the farmer's market. Or if you do, geez, more power to you. But yeah, that's going to be one of those things that if you have to spend more time managing the display and the artistry of it as opposed to actually selling that product, you might have your priorities a little bit upside down. Color is a really useful instrument to make a display pop, especially if you can have similar products of different shades marketed together. For example, these 3 different colors of tomatoes. This is a really nice, unique contrast between very similar products. Great way to make a real impression at your display. This is another one of those situations where it looks beautiful, the different colored berries arranged in a certain way. You know, my OCD really wants to get that red raspberry out of the blackberries, but, you know, A fabulous, wonderful display. But again, if you've got to spend more time managing the appearance than you do actually making transactions, reconsider about the ease of use for you yourself as the vendor when you're selling this stuff. Or leave those displays as sort of display models and then have the backstock underneath that you can sell quickly. If the product itself is colorful, have a nice neutral background. Some of that cheap green grass carpet or just, flower sack cloth. Oh, boy, that makes a really nice, neutral, farmy looking background that really lends itself to accentuating the farm fresh product you've got on your display. Again, color. Different colors, different textures for flowers, for potatoes. Similar products, different colors, placed together makes a real pop. This is something that I pretty firmly believe is an important thing for people who visit the farmers market. They really like abundance, and they're really bummed when stuff is gone. So, even when supplies are getting low, you really want to give the appearance of abundance if you possibly can. Constantly changing the container or restocking the product so it always looks like there's a ton of it left and it's all good. That's really a useful thing. Very seldom does anybody want to buy the last, bag of lettuce, the last dozen eggs, the last breakfast burrito, whatever it is. Especially here in the Midwest, folks are reticent to take the last one because they feel like they're being rude, or they feel like things have been picked over already, or whatever. You always want to give the appearance of bounty if you possibly can. I mean, people have seen this example over and over again with like baskets turned on their sides so it just looks like the potatoes are spilling out. We've got so many of them we can't even contain them in our packages. And that's all fine and good. Just make sure there's not a lot of kids in your market that are rolling them off and kicking them around the marketplace. So in a situation like this, where things are, you're halfway through market, about half of your heirloom tomatoes have already sold, and the rest of them are probably still fantastic. There's probably absolutely nothing wrong with those tomatoes that are left, but when they're sitting there and that green carpet is showing through, they look picked over. And people are more likely to focus on the flaws than on the good stuff because they think, oh, everybody's already bought the good ones. So in a situation like this, you've got a real simple fix. You just start pushing those things together on the table. If it's multiple tables, you take one table down and combine everything on the one table instead of having it spread out over multiple. And then just do a little bit of merchandising. If there's a soft spot or a weird spot or a yellow spot or whatever, just flip that upside down and make sure that the best side of that tomato is showing through. Don't let things look picked over. Don't let people think they're buying the last one. If you need to, give away the last one. Maybe you'll create a customer for next week. Farmers markets tend to be, anymore, and maybe they didn't begin this way, but anymore they tend to be pretty high dollar destinations. You're not going to a farmer's market to buy, generally, a huge bulk amount of really cheap stuff. Most of the farmers markets that survive and are real beneficial for the farmers that go there are the ones that are going to be selling top shelf stuff at a premium price. To customers that have the expendable income in order to pay that premium price. So be aware of that. Make sure that you know that the sell zone, the place where the best visibility of product is going to take place, is going to be right from about eye level down to about Well, if your elbow's down by your side, that's perfect. But the surface of that table. Try not to have a lot of product at knee level or below. There's a couple reasons for that. They've actually done some sociological research that says shoppers don't like to bend over to reach product on the ground. Some people have a physical infirmity that doesn't allow them to bend over easily. Yeah, that's just one of those things where stuff should be high enough up that it's easy to access and easy to see. Um, there are also situations where there are farmers markets that allow dogs, they allow pets. And well, you can imagine a dog lifting their leg on a pumpkin and that pumpkin not selling for a very good price after that. So be very aware of sort of the contextual situation of what's going on the ground around you. You also, from a food safety standpoint, are going to want to avoid letting fresh product come in contact with some of the stuff that's on the ground. So, keep it up high, keep it at eye level or as close to it as possible. Keep it easy to see, easy to access. Most people are only thinking about their farmer's market booth as far as the horizontal space on those tabletops. But don't forget about the vertical space where you should be placing your sign, placing your pictures, placing your whatever, your extra product in order to make a sort of a visual impact. This is a situation where there's things I love and there's things I don't. Again, just like the last example we talked about, I think that this person is going to great lengths in order to utilize her vertical space. Those radishes look awesome. They're in the nice woven baskets. They're piled high, really creating a sense of abundance. Stuff is spilling out of those woven baskets. It looks fantastic. But there are minuses to this as well. She's gone high enough that you can't always see her face, which, if this is a situation where you're trying to create a relationship as much as you are trying to create a transaction with your product, that's a potentially problematic thing. I'm sure the rest of her booth has a lower area to do the transaction, and it's not as big of a deal as it looks in this picture here. The other thing that I would consider improving just a little bit with this particular booth would be the way that the prices are displayed. As you can see, I assume this is early in the season. There's lots of greens and lots of radishes and different varieties, some oniony type of things as well. I have the feeling that it's going to be really hard for your average vegetable consumer to know the difference between, say, a white icicle, a French breakfast, and a cherry bomb radish. So, I mean, the different varieties of radishes and all that written in the small script on the whiteboard, back in the back of the booth behind a tall mountain of radishes, that's not going to be the best way to convey the information you need to convey in order for people to know what they want to know in order to initiate that transaction. So make sure that you're visible, make sure that the information is visible in addition to having that product visible. Personally, I'd rather see the prices associated with the product right there on the product, so it makes it very intuitive as to what I'm buying and how much I'm paying for it. Not always possible, but I'd consider it preferable. Sampling. I don't know about if you folks that are joining us are from here in Illinois like I am or not, but you know that sampling is it's a point, not necessarily a point of contention, but it's a point of effort at the farmer's market nowadays. There is research that says sampling increases sales at the farmer's market. If you're trying to bring something unique, flavorful, heirloom, whatever it is, it's a lot nicer if that person knows what all those characteristics on the sign really translate to in terms of taste. So if you can get your food in their face, it's a much higher likelihood that they're going to complete a monetary transaction with you as well. Now, if you're here in Illinois, you're going to need to complete an Illinois Farmers Market food sampling handler training, or already have the Food Service Safety Manager certification. People don't like the sound of that. It sounds like a lot of work. But frankly, it's really not. I mean, I sat down at my computer with, a free hour or whatever, and completed my certificate of completion for the basic food safety course. And it helped me learn a little bit about what I'd need to have at the farmer's market, the hand washing, the fly screens, the different types of utensil washing, all of that kind of stuff. So it does force you to be a little bit more strategic and well prepared when you're going to be able to offer samples. So it's a good thing. And you can see here that I passed with honors, a proud moment. Product labels. So if you're not a handwriting person, maybe you should work on these through the computer, or maybe you should have a person that has good handwriting create them. You do want to be very legible about conveying not only the product and the variety, but also the price and any kind of inherent benefits that come along with that product. These are a nice example of a simple sign just taped on the side of the bin. How much does it cost for how much product, what variety it is there any kind of deal? Those are all very legibly, very easily conveyed on those containers of Bing cherries. Any kind of attributes that might add value, certified organic, unsprayed, certified naturally grown, any kind of thing that you think that the customers at that market might be looking for that you can honestly meet, having those attributes listed out on the signage can be really beneficial as well. Be careful not to, having a suggested use, and this goes along with sort of the recipe cards that a lot of people pass out as well, especially if you've got sort of a less well-known product that you're selling, if it's celery root or something, or whatever. Make sure that people have a good understanding of how they're going to use that product. Or maybe you give them the suggested use first. You say, use your celery root for this kind of stew, and then also have for sale many of the other ingredients that they need for it, and maybe a suggested vendor next door that has the other ingredients you need for it. All of a sudden that creates a nice sales opportunity for you and for your neighbor. Don't go overboard on the signage. You don't want the signage to be the center of attention over the product. You don't want it to detract from the product. Once again, I think this is probably a grocery store and not a farmer's market. But, when you've got all of these descriptors on there in multiple colors, in very large signs that are blocking the view of many of the products available, all colors, great digestive aid, OMG, delectable. I mean, some of those things are useful and some of them may not be. You don't want to make claims that you can't back up. You don't want to have throwaway words on there. Make sure that the necessary information and the verifiable, useful information is on there. And don't detract from the appearance of your product if you can help it. Now, if you've got nothing but greens available this week, maybe having some colorful signage might add a little visual variety to the overall display. So if you get a chance to, step out of your display and look at it from the customer's standpoint, because that's going to give you a really much better sense of what people are seeing and whether or not they're going to be drawn in. Everybody's favorite, pricing. Pricing's a bit of a game, and there's a lot of different things that factor into it. But the primary factor is going to be pricing in line with your customers' WTP, their willingness to pay. If you have a sticker price out there that's going to create absolute sticker shock, and especially if there are vendors in the market that are selling it for less for a very similar product, you're going to have a hard time getting some of that stuff moved. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't have different prices for different marketplaces. For example, if you sell what you have at the farmer's market in, little town downstate Illinois for what you sell in northwestern suburbs of Chicago, you're probably leaving money on the table. And it's probably costing you, quite a bit in terms of travel and marketing costs in order to just get up there and make a transaction happen. So make sure that you do have different prices for different marketplaces if they are, geographically very disparate, or if in terms of your marketing costs, if you have much higher marketing costs. Now, do you want to have a drastically different price from one little town to next little town the next day? Probably not. But it becomes a little bit more intuitive if you're doing some additional traveling in order to get to higher dollar, higher traffic marketplaces. It's useful to have an explanation at the ready to explain why your prices are what they are. And this is especially a useful time to know your production and marketing costs. Because, when I say that this dozen eggs is $5, and I can say that I've got $1 in feed, $1 in marketing costs, i.e. gas and infrastructure. I have 50 cents worth of packaging, and I've got, whatever else. It starts to be a little bit more explainable that you are not just raking them over the coals. You are trying to recoup your production and marketing costs and have a little margin left over so it's worthwhile for you to do this again. And if that explanation works and the people try that product and they love it, that is really a time where you're going to have some full-fledged understanding of all the stuff that is inherent in that product, and you might get a loyal customer out of it. So have an explanation for your prices. Don't just say, we charge that because everybody else charged that, even though that could be the main motivator. So know what the other vendors at your farmer's market are charging, and if you can help it, try not to be one of those people that comes in and willfully, drastically undercuts their prices. If you've got people selling at a farmer's market that are trying to make a living as a small farmer, and a hobbyist comes in with a trunk load of whatever it is, zucchini in midsummer, and starts giving it away while everybody else is trying to sell it, all of a sudden you have a real serious problem. There is somebody willfully undercutting those other vendors that are making that market worthwhile. So as a market vendor, as a market manager, try not to let that kind of situation take place if you can help it. Now, if you have a sale one week, or it's a buy one, get one for $1 off, and it's not directly changing the pricing expectations of what the product is going to be at week to week. It's just sort of a temporary, sales motivation type of thing. That makes a little bit more sense. But try not to be the person that has the 50% off sale in the last 15 minutes of market every week. That dumping at the end of market. I understand the reason for it. I really do. I mean, you don't want to bring back all sorts of product that's been sitting out in the sun for 5 hours and probably is just going to end up on the compost pile. But you also don't want to train farmers market customers to come to your booth at the end of market every week when things have been sitting out for a long time, and that's the only experience they have with your project is something that's cheap and something that's wilted, and then they have a negative product experience even if they had a positive customer service experience. So just be really careful about that dumping at the end of the market. Sometimes I'd rather have a zero profit outlet for things that are left over, like a food pantry, for example, or a rescue mission or whatever, where I could take my leftovers at the end of market. Sometimes even a farmer's market manager can do a real service by setting up a gleaning program where the leftover product can go to someplace charitable. Okay, 2/3 of the way through, talked about booths, talked about merchandising, talked about customer service and pricing. Feel free to interject questions with this anytime, but the last little piece is on social media marketing. This is going to be one of those marketing efforts that takes place in between markets? Well, now that I say that, they can take place at the market too. I know a lot of people who have got drummed up some foot traffic by placing something on Facebook or Instagram right there at the farmer's market. So don't eliminate that as an option. But social media should really be part of your broader plan to build your brand. That's what social media is about. And this slide from Ethology is probably one of the most concise ways I've ever seen anyone say what you need to have in order to do a successful social media campaign. This is what you need to think through before you hit post on your phone or on your computer. And this is basically what we're going to talk about for these last 10-15 minutes is all these different parts of this flowchart. Who are you marketing to? Who is it that you're trying to attract? Whose needs are you considering? Why are you creating this content in the first place? How am I lining up this user's needs with what I have to offer? How am I getting it out in front of them? Am I choosing the correct channel? Am I choosing the correct wording? Am I adding a picture in order to generate more interaction? And then posting. What are we creating? When is it getting posted? How is it getting promoted? Are we paying for that promotion? And then last but not least, going into some of the analytics and say, did that work? Should I bother doing that again? If I put $5 into a Facebook boost, did I get any additional sales out of that? What's my ROI, my return on investment? So if you don't remember anything else about social media from the rest of this presentation, I really want you to remember this slide. And it is not a new concept. Who, why, how, what, and where, okay? Start figuring out your social media, think it through before you post anything, and understand what message you're trying to create, for whom, what you want them to do, and how you can determine whether or not that message was received. So for example, we've got a couple of different customer segments that we market to. We have got a larger town nearby where most of our customers are female in the middle to the 35 to 65 years old. Higher income, they live near a golf course, they're educated, many of them are retired. We think about that customer segment. And then we also think about the local rural people that are buying our stuff as well. Now, so we've got these different customer segments. And if you haven't already thought about your customer segmentation, it's a worthwhile thing to think about. Who are the different sort of populations of people that are my primary customers? And then once you have that customer segment kind of delineated as to who is within that, you can more appropriately craft a message and the channel that's going to reach that segment. So if my wife just wants to tell people in our little town that our eggs are on sale at the grocery store, she'll go through a Facebook group that she's created for our business. If she's trying to reach her entire egg buying club who comes on a week-to-week basis, she'll give them an email a couple of days in advance. She knows how those people communicate and what they're going to respond to. So knowing that audience of people, knowing those folks that buy from you on the regular, is going to be a really worthwhile way to help craft that social media strategy. Why are you posting on social media? And depending on which medium you're using, there can be different points to it. Like one of the things when you're first starting out is like if you're a new farmer, you might want to get fans or followers, somebody that's going to regularly get informed about new content that you post. That's one objective for social media. If you're creating an event, like if you're a farmer's market manager and you want people to come to an event, how do you get them to click on that event? If you just want to create interaction, deepen some relationships by having a back and forth with some people out there, maybe you want to get answers to questions that you've been asked at the farmer's market. So define what it is you're actually what outcome you're actually trying to have with the social media campaign that you're creating. In addition to all this, you might just be providing information. You might be providing, insight into farm life, how I got attacked by a chicken today or whatever. Relevant information about your product. Is it a health thing? Is it a pastured thing? Is it an omega-3 thing? Make sure it's a claim that you can back up. And then, if your customers would probably be the type of people that are in a similar peer group and would really like each other, oftentimes it's nice to provide a forum for interaction. Even if you don't do like an on-farm breakfast or whatever, maybe you create a place where they can ask each other questions. So what I'd encourage you is to, instead of thinking about individual posts, define your objective and create a campaign around that objective. And that campaign might include a series of Facebook posts, a couple of Instagram pictures, and a targeted email. We're having a sale at the farmer's market at this location on this day. And then have it on all those different social media marketplaces, and what is the strategy you're going to use to actually get someone to look at that. Because they're inundated with information on any one of those channels. Choose the platform that's most appropriate. The kind of gist of this slide is that Facebook is still far and away the most utilized social media platform. There are a couple that are growing quickly, like Instagram, like Snapchat. And the other take-home point is that most everybody who uses any of those other smaller reach social media channels is also using Facebook. Facebook is sort of just this home base, and they have additional social media channels that they're connected with as well. So if you're trying to reach the greatest swath of your customer audience at the same time, if you're not emailing them directly, then Facebook might be the easiest way to get them. But it also might be the busiest way. So weigh that in as well. And I'm sorry I didn't go more into those stats. I'm running out of time here, and I want to talk through some questions at the end too. Like I mentioned before, reciprocity across social media platforms. Pretty much everybody who uses Facebook, the 93, 95, 92, 89, those who use Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, or LinkedIn are also using Facebook. If you're not trying to use Facebook as one of your primary platforms, and you prefer sort of the short form types, for example, you might want to have somebody who uses Twitter and somebody who uses Instagram, and that's that 65% overlap. Those people who are, if you use the shorter form, more visual voice for your social media strategy, the people who have that overlap are going to be useful social media consumers for you and for your farm. This is how often people are looking at stuff. For the Facebook one, I'd be curious to see if they put it on there hourly or by minute. People who are checking their social media platforms, those who are on Facebook, are using it very frequently, mostly every day. Instagram, about half are using it every day. And it sort of drops off from there. So you can see that farming and farmers markets really do lend themselves well to a very visual approach. So make sure you have images with those posts. If all of this overwhelms you, choose one social media channel and do it well. That would be a piece of advice that I'd leave you with, because I get overwhelmed with social media stuff. So choose one, do a great job at it, and you're probably going to get more customers and interaction by doing a great job and exhibiting your voice and your brand than by being spread over 17 different social media channels that you do poorly. Quick example, a friend of ours who has a mum and vegetable operation in central Illinois, also happens to be sort of a brilliant mind in terms of marketing and brand building. She has got a lot of advice regarding brand building from a visual standpoint. Making sure that you have consistency to color, font, logo, and voice. Voice is basically you coming through. Are you using a lot of basically short information and clip sentences? That's fine. Use social media channels that lend themselves to that. If you're an explainer or a long-form talker, as you probably have guessed that I might be, use a social media channel that lends itself to that. Let your own voice come through. If you're funny, be funny. If you're informative, be informative. If you're impolite, well, don't be impolite on social media if you can help it, because that's not going to gain you a lot of customers. But she has gotten this very consistent brand presence through many different social media platforms. Here's just her main word mark and logo here on the right side of this slide, and you can see that she's got that word mark and logo at her website, along with some beautiful imagery of the produce that she does and the words that she wants associated with her brand. Farm, fresh, best, locally grown. And you're going to see consistency with that in a lot of the other channels as well. She's got a Facebook page, consistent imagery, consistent word mark and logo, Twitter feed, consistent imagery of the farm, word mark and logo, a lot of those same words. Instagram, word mark and logo, colors, all that kind of stuff. So basically, if a person finds you on any channel, they are going to have an easier time identifying your presence on any of the other channels, because it's the same colors, it's the same name, it's the same logo, it's the same font. So allowing for those things in the consistency of branding is really going to make a more unified and harmonized web presence for yourself and for your farm. Oh, she's on Pinterest too. When you are creating content for a social media channel, please do make it visual if you possibly can. So this is some of the analytics from our farm website, or excuse me, our farm Facebook page. And you can tell that the place where we just have the farm logo, let's see if I can do a highlighter here. So these places where we've just got the farm logo, like that, you can tell that there's very minimal interaction with any of those posts. Because just having a farm logo there means we didn't have an image posted. But if you, like my wife, you're very good about posting the image, about having the hashtags, about all that good jazz, you are going to have drastically more interaction with each of those individual posts. So make sure that you look and see how things are performing, possibly to the point where you are figuring out the most appropriate time of day that your audience is likely to interact with something. So take pictures with your phone, pull it out, take pictures. Farming lends itself to beautiful imagery, okay? So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you take pictures of the sunset or the ripe tomato or the whatever. And maybe avoid some of the trials and tribulations, because you want people to have an honest concept of what it is that you do, but you don't have to tell them about every nitty-gritty detail. But if you make it interactive, if you make it evocative, if you make people understand how it is that you're thinking or feeling at that moment, there's more likely to be interactivity there. Watch your language a little bit. How often do I have to post? This is just a little infographic from SumAll, and they do different levels of posting for the different popular social media channels. Pinterest requires the most, then Twitter. Google+, I don't know who actually uses Google+. Some people do. Facebook is really only about 2 posts per day is going to be the maximum interaction. Same with Instagram. So kind of keep it light. You know, you don't have to post every single little thing. Think about that campaign that we talked about earlier. And if you're going to do the blog, maybe 2 posts per week. There are services out there like Buffer and Hootsuite that allow you to schedule posts for the rest of the week or the rest of the month. So if you have a social media marketing day for your farm, that's one good way to sort of plan it out for an extended period of time. And check out your analytics. What time of day did people see it? What did those people look like? Men, women, what age groups? Where were they at? And like I showed before, interactivity with each different post. And you're going to start to understand better who you're reaching and when, and whether or not that's translating into something that is actually giving you some sales at the farmer's market. So, in conclusion, like I mentioned before, I was talking about bounty. I really think abundance is important for you to provide as a farmer's market vendor. Abundance of product that is awesome, fresh, high quality, good tasting stuff. Handle it carefully, present it attractively, and try not to run out. Ample information, and the information is about price, it's about variety, it's about how you grew it, it's about how they should cook it, it's about the story of yourself and your farm and why you chose to grow that. And finally, customer service. Blow their expectations out of the water if you want to. If you want to. Because if you blow them out of the water once, you might be expected to blow them out of the water again. So, that's what I have for you today. And we've got about 5 minutes left for questions, right, Lori?
Yes, we do. And I'm going to unmute our guests today so they can go ahead and ask questions. If you don't want to verbally ask the question, feel free to type it in the text box. Are there any questions at all from anyone?
How about we do a couple things? You know I'm a big stations person. You know I am. I teach in stations.
Okay.
Is that person talking to us? I could hear something. And if you're trying to ask us a question, we can't hardly hear you.
Newspaper 5. Yeah.
I think it's just a rebound from the microphones.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't see any questions right now. This is a really good information, Andrew, on marketing and getting your logos out. And I think one of the biggest things that I see, especially in the South Central or Southern Illinois area with our farmers markets, is when I go to talk to these vendors, they have no business cards. They have nothing that shows that the product that I'm getting is from that booth. And so when I want to go back the next week, if it's a market I don't attend on a regular basis, but I really like their products, I don't know where I bought it from.
Yep.
So that makes a big difference to be able to get your name in front of those people even after you've brought that product home.
You bet. And it's one of the things that's sort of key to creating loyal customers is not only letting them remember you, it's you remembering them. If you're the type of person that's good enough to have things like an email newsletter or a Facebook page that you want other people to like and all that, maybe have a sign-up sheet. You know, a clipboard where people can write down their information about this is how to stay in touch with me. That's invaluable to you as a business person. Those are the people who are volunteering their contact information, which is often a closely guarded secret. They are volunteering that contact information for you to have the opportunity to provide them information and continue to interact with them. So make sure that you are making that opportunity available to you as a small business person.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any other questions from anyone? Well, I would like to inform you that there will be 2 other webinars, the Illinois Farmers Market Association Summer Webinar Series, and they are up on the screen here. The first one is Engagement Marketing Special Events. We'll be talking about what you can do at your market to bring in people, especially using any type of special events, maybe holidays or something that's just going to set your market apart from others. That's on July 10th at 6:30 p.m. The second one is Growing Your Market with Grant Funding, and Deborah Kavanaugh Grant will be talking about how to write the grants, what to look for, what type of wording are you going to need. And it's going to be beneficial to be able to start thinking about this now as these grants start to open at the end of this year, beginning of next year. You'll be able to start getting all this information together to make it a lot easier on yourself. So Deborah will be talking about how to get into grant funding and what to start looking about on those. I don't see any other questions at this time, so thank you, Andrew, for giving us the information on this great topic. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are going to be able to incorporate this into their booths this summer.
You betcha, Lori. And yeah, you saw my contact info. Don't hesitate to drop me a line.
Great, thank you. And I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us on this webinar. I do hope that you get some information that will help you develop or promote your market in this 2017 season. Please look for an email from me to the link with the archived webinar you have just watched. Feel free to go ahead and pass it along to others that you think may benefit from that. With that, I wish you a fabulous rest of the day and a very successful growing season in 2017. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, folks.